Hello and welcome to tutorial 166 in this series of programs and tutorials that focus on TradeStation Easy Language. And a Gold Pass member asked me a question about how to go about making sure that a drawing object is kept on the screen set to automatic scaling as the screen is scrolled. So let me just explain that. For example, in this program here, we're drawing a horizontal line, and you'll see that as I scroll around the screen, you'll see it's no longer visible. Now it's still there, but we just can't see it. So if I were to go and condense the view, you'll see that it's at a rather higher level than the current price action. So basically what he wanted to do was to modify the program so that the scale would always include the level of that horizontal line. Now, as always, there's many ways this or other ways this could be done, but this is just one way that I'm going to do it. And let me going to just turn off this study on this chart. And one of the things that we'll see as we go through this is that the slight problem is this is using macros, and macros are only applicable to the active chart, and that does create certain issues. But let me show you the program that I've created, and going to go to Studies, Edit Studies, and I'm just going to change the status back to on. Here we have the program. Now, just going to make sure, this is one thing that you do need to be careful of with this program, is that when you go to customize, that you enable run command easy language keyword. And for this particular case, I suggest you would want to make this confirmation off. Otherwise, you're going to get an awful lot of occasions where you need to say go ahead and run the macro. Of course, that might not be the same if you're using macros to generate orders, of course. Let's look at this program, and you'll see here that as we scroll forward, the most recent bar, you can see the drawing object, you can see the chart. Now, if we just go back a little bit, you'll see that we can still see the drawing object even though the price action is condensed at the bottom. And if we just continue going back, you'll see that the line actually goes below the price action. But again, we can see all the time, we can see all of the price and that price, the level of the drawing object on the same screen, just for that particular range of bars. So let me just go through the program that I created to do this. This will be available for download. The first thing to note is that this is using several methods, but let's just go to the very start of the program, which is at the bottom of the program, because the methods always must go before the things like the one statement. And what we're doing is we are drawing a horizontal line, very simple syntax to do that. We're adding that to the chart, and then we're calculating a spacer value just equal to the minimum move divided by price scale. So that's happening once. And then on the last bar on the chart, we are going to once run two methods. And the first method, find high-low on screen, is going to find the high-low on screen. In other words, the screen that is visible at the moment between the first date time at the left of the chart and the date time at the right that we can see at the moment is going to find the high and the low for that. And then what we're going to do in this method, update min max, is we're going to run some macros to change the scaling of the chart based on the values of the high and the low, and of course the horizontal line. So let's first of all look at the find high low on screen. So that is here, and what we do is we create a couple of date time variables, right dt and left dt, and then we store in those the value of get app info AI left disp date time. In other words, the date time of the most part of the chart. And because that's going into a datetime object, we need to convert it, and we do that by using the .el datetime ex operator there. And should just note as well that we do need, if you're typing this program in as you're watching it, we do need several namespaces. That's EL system drawing objects, EL system drawing, and EL system. So let's go back to this first method. I left in some print statements. You could delete those. They're not necessary, obviously, for the running of the program. But then we've got a couple of variables, and we can say the visible high is 0, the visible low is 99999. These are what we're going to update as we go through and look at each bar. And then we're going to count back. So bearing in mind that this is going to be occurring on the most recent bar on the chart, the last bar on the chart, we're counting back from 0 to, we're going back from 0 to the current bar. In other words, we're going back in time throughout the bars. We are then finding the bars that are actually on the screen at the moment. In other words, those bars that are less than or equal to right date time and greater or equal to left date time. Then we're going to say, is the high of that bar greater than visible high? In which case, visible high becomes the high of that bar. And if the low of the low counter is less than the visible low, then visible low becomes the low of that bar. And by doing that, we find the highest and the lowest in the range visible on the screen. And then, of course, when we get a bar with a date time less than the left DT, in other words, to the left of the visible chart at this moment, the visible screen, then we can break out of that loop. So that is going to store the highest high and the lowest low in these two variables, visible high and visible low. So having done that, we then run the update min max, which is another method. So this method, again, I've got a print statement there. It is not necessary for the running of the program, just put it there to help explain the program a little bit. But we've got several eventualities, and so the first one is if the value of the horizontal line, which is DBL highest high, if that plus a spacer, and you can just ignore the spacer for the moment, is greater than the visible high, in other words, the highest price on the screen visible at the moment, then what we do is we run a command and we change the highest value on the screen using .fixmax, using a run command, so running this macro, that becomes the price of the horizontal line, and the minimum rests the visible low, which is the minimum price on that screen. Equally, if the value of the horizontal line minus spacer is less than the visible low, in other words, the horizontal line has gone below the bottom of the visible screen, then what we do is we run the macro again, but we change the fixed max to the visible high, in other words, the highest price on the screen for the chart, and we run command fix min for the value of the horizontal line. I've made some adjustments based on the a spacer, just to make sure that those values are visible on the chart. And finally, if neither of those are true, in other words, the price and the line both fit on the chart, then we just change the fix max and fix min to be the visible high and visible low, because the value of the horizontal line is between those values. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm explaining it quickly, but assume you can go back through this if you are interested. Now, what we want to do is, as we use the program, we might wish to go backwards and forwards, and we want the program to keep up to date. And the way we're going to do that is by using a timer. So this is the standard timer that we're using. In other words, you go to Toolbox and click on Timer, which I've already done. And then I've set the timer here. If we go to, let me just open the properties. Like so, you'll see that I've set an interval of 1,000, which means 1 second, 1,000 milliseconds. I've set auto reset and I've set enable. And then here in the events, I've created a timer one elapsed event, which goes off every second. And that is to be found higher up in the program here. And what that does is it says, if it is the last bar on the chart, it recalculates the highest high, which is the value of the horizontal line, which I may not have mentioned, but that is just arbitrarily set to the highest high of a user input number of bars back. Once we've calculated that, we can set the value of the line to that value. And then we go through and we've got various checks here, but what we don't want is to redraw, recalculate every second if we don't need to. So what I've done is I've added some conditions. So for example, I've said that the value of the horizontal line can't be 0. I've said if left dt is not the same as the dt from Julian of the current left value, AI left displayed date time. So dt from Julian is another method. Just quickly look at that you can find out more information from TradeStation here. And what that does, it just finds the legacy date and the legacy time from the value that we're putting into it, and then it converts that into a date time object. In other words, what we're saying here is if we have moved to a value that is not the current value of the leftmost date time for the chart, then we're going to run this thing. If the right dt is not the same as the current value for the right of the chart, if the highest high, or rather if the variable containing the value of the horizontal line is greater than the current highest display value, or it is lower than the lowest display value, or finally if low is less than the lowest display value, then we also run the methods, which run them exactly the same as we did before, and so that checks every second to see if any of those things are true. One thing to bear in mind with this, as I mentioned at the beginning, is that with this the running macros in a program, they only apply to the active chart, and you could in theory run the program on 2 charts, but it would only actually affect the one that is currently active. And what I've found is that in transitioning from one chart to another, that can cause some problems, because the upper and lower value of the chart can generate some errors, which you then need to switch off the program, switch it back on, etc. But for one chart that you're watching, I think it works quite efficiently. Anyway, so hopefully you found this useful. If you have any questions, then please let me know. And also, if you have not subscribed to this YouTube channel, then please do so. And if you've not subscribed to the email list for Marketplex, then please go to https://marketplex.com and you can sign up there. Anyway, hopefully you will find you have found this useful, and I will see you next time.